So today we have here with us a product which defies every single definition that we know in audio. This is the ECDesigns PowerDAC-SX. It is a DAC. I want to keep it at that because I will have to explain what it does, what it is, what it's like, and what it isn't. This is a DAC priced at 3,500 euros or about 4,000 US dollars. It is what I would consider to be the best implementation of a DAC for speakers. So we will have to see why I'm saying this when we look at the back of the unit. It is a heavy and sturdy unit made with a metallic chassis. The edges are a bit sharp and they have good cooling. Now the back has just one optical input, one 2-pin power input and 2 speaker outputs. This means that by most traditional definitions this would be a speaker amplifier. The thing is, there is no amplifier inside, no operational amplifier, no amplifier otherwise. This is as pure as you can get a DAC to be. It is a DAC with gain. It has a very interesting design to work around the fact that most DACs and most solutions will introduce distortion and will degrade the sonic quality when you reduce the volume. And you may think to yourself that that's not that important, but actually you listen to a lower than maximum volume at all times. Very rarely do you listen at maximum volume, if ever, like really ever. I never crank the volume at absolute max with anything. So we are always victims of this sound degradation. I'll have to see this somewhere else because it's so heavy and so large, it's hard to keep around. This also has to be the first time I'm happy that I delayed the review because I learned quite a few new things after using it. But first let's delve into the remote. This is the remote for the unit, also made of metal, very sturdy. The face moves a lot, which helps you make music as well. But the face has 3 buttons: minus volume, plus volume, and a mute button. That's it. The remote has a mini USB charger. I don't think you've seen this in almost 10 years, but this is a mini USB charger. At any rate, the company does provide a charging cable for it. I don't know why mini USB was used, but it works okay. You don't really have to charge the remote ever. I have only charged it once when the DAC arrived and that was it. No further charges. So I wouldn't make a big deal out of it. My Samsung remote was never charged since receiving the TV, which was over a year ago, and I used the remote all the time. The important part that you really have to consider purchasing a UT192 or UT96, which is a USB to optical converter. The company did inform me that they made the decision to have just one optical input because having 2 would have degraded the sound. So that's it, it can't have multiple inputs. Everything was designed around having the best sonic quality, the best sound possible with no sacrifices done to music. This UT192 has one USB Type-A input, one optical output, and an RCA output, which I don't really know yet what it does. You should check out my full written review if you want to learn more about it. I'll make a separate review, written at least for those, because they have an interesting function. That USB to optical converter is important because with some interfaces you will have a delay. For example, I was using the Sound Blaster EA9, which is here, and Sound Blaster EA9 has delay if you are using the optical output, which means that sound doesn't happen in real time. And I was concerned. I originally wrote the full written review and I stated that there is some delay. I was guessing that is not coming from the PowerDAC-SX. I contacted the company and they told me it can't be from it. It is something else in the listening chain. So I asked them to send over their USB to optical converters, and indeed with their USB to optical converters there is no delay. I can play games in real time, I can watch movies, and I can listen to music, including live concerts and video clips. Really important to take that into account. Make sure that you have a good USB to optical interface, because otherwise you're missing the whole point of a unit that has just optical input. PowerDAC-SX is basically a DAC with gain. It's not even a DAC with gain, it's the actual gain of the DAC. I wrote a full written review which covers a lot of the special tech used in the DAC, but the simplest way to describe it is that it is a DAC which has enough gain to drive most speakers out there, and the volume control is done really smartly in such a way that it's actually more similar to an R2R DAC array than anything else, and this is what I thought about when I wrote the original review. The whole design resembles slightly an R2R DAC, but it doesn't have the downsides of an R2R DAC. It has some of the strengths of it and no downside at all. So ECDesigns is basically good for driving speakers. It can work for driving some headphones, especially if you have one of those converters from speaker to headphone output like Coffeeman #A6 SA, but most speakers won't require it, although it is a possibility. The sound of the PowerDAC-SX is insanely good, and one of the things that you will notice is that the sound becomes excellent from volume 1. There is no need to go to high volumes for better resolution, for better clarity, and for better detail. The DAC is designed around providing the best sonic quality at every single volume, so it has the best volume control that I have ever heard in my entire life. It keeps the volume control complete. Basically, every single step sounds the same as the other steps, just louder. With most amplifiers, with most DACs, you don't get this. You get some kind of added distortion at either higher or lower volumes. Typically, the best sound would be at the maximum volume, but sometimes gain is used above a certain point, and then to reduce the volume at lower volumes, you use an attenuator, which also affects the sound. With ECDesigns PowerDAC-SX, nothing like that was done. There is nothing that cut the quality out of your sound. It's absolutely insane how the company managed to do that. It is one of their very few products. The company has a small catalog of products, but each one of them is deeply refined for the best sonic quality possible. They don't do a lot of different products, but what they do is done really well. The company is also from Europe, and those are made by hand. You can actually see that. It is assembled really nicely. It's also quite heavy, so because it takes a 2-pin power input, that means there is a power converter inside. And at first I thought it would get hot, but it doesn't really get even warm during usage. It will get warmer with higher volumes, and it will stay cooler if you are using lower volumes, which is a positive thing. You don't really feel the need to turn it off. It just enters the standby mode, from which it wakes up easily once you play music. It takes it about half a second to wake up, and it takes it a long while to enter the sleep mode. It doesn't really consume anything if there is no music playing, so there is something about it that I have to clarify. When a lightning strikes, you can't really call the electric current AC or DC. It's neither of those. The same situation happens with this DAC. It's not class D amplifier, it's not class A amplifier, it's neither of those. It doesn't have an amplifier. It's very important to make a distinction between having a either class amplifier and having no amplifier. This is the DAC. This is why the DAC becomes hotter and warmer when processing sound and when actually outputting sound, and it stays pretty cool when there is no sound playing through. It means that you really don't have to worry about cooling it off. The unit can be placed basically anywhere, and it is an all-in-one solution. You won't be able to use a different DAC or a different amp. What you'll be able to use are different cables, different speakers, of course, and a different USB to optical transformer. When testing the UT192, I noticed that it sounds pretty much the same as the optical output of the Creative Sound Blaster EA9, but without the delay, and that was important. It is very important for me to not have USB delay or any kind of delay. I like using an amp like this to play games. I like using it to watch movies, to watch concerts, to watch video clips, and the delay is a big enemy of those. To test the ECDesigns PowerDAC-SX, I have used the Pylon Diamond 30 Mark II. I hope that's not that long of a name, but Pylon Audio created a pair of tower speakers, which is my favorite currently. Very dynamic, very detailed, and actually better than some of the studio equipment that I've tested and used over the years. ECDesigns PowerDAC-SX sounds a bit softer than if using the Ketches S300 Plus. Ketches S300 Plus has a more direct sound. It doesn't have any kind of volume control, which means that any kind of volume processing will happen at the DAC level. This is a smart idea because usually when you control the volume from the speaker amplifier, you degrade the sound quickly with lower volumes. And keep in mind, you never listen at maximum volume. You always listen at half of the maximum volume at most. Unless you're holding a party, then you can crank it up, you can do whatever you want. It's your party, just go crazy. But unless it's a party, you want the volume to be really good at low volumes because that's how you listen to. You likely have a family, a wife, kids, a dog, a cat, anything. You can't really crank the volume at maximum. I can't. I really can't crank the volume at maximum. I actually don't even know what would happen if I did that. Because the actual driving power, and this is what I was getting at, the actual driving power the PowerDAC-SX can put into speakers is insane. When you think about a DAC which has gain, you think that it would be lacking impact. It has excellent control, a really deep and powerful bass with no distortion. It has a softer but more musical mid-range with a rich, and I mean really rich presentation of textures, but is not rich in the tube way. The tube way typically adds a bit of distortion. That, you know, the tube distortion is something which is very characteristic of tubes. It transforms your voice from sounding like a very clean ah to an you see a little vibration. That is what tubes typically do. Some people consider that to be richness, some people enjoy it a lot. Some tube amplifiers rely on it to create their sound, and some tube amplifiers don't really have a lot of it. We have here the Felix Audio Euphoria Evo, which has very little distortion. You can really design around it. ECDesigns did with the PowerDAC-SX is that they made sure there is zero distortion. You can hear every single bit of music, rich, full, and flavorful. This is what I would call the sound. It's really flavorful, dynamic, and impactful. I love every single bit of its sound, and the treble is sharp, well-defined, but softer in the transients, which means softer textures, a non-fatiguing presentation, and just an enjoyable overall sound with every single type of music. It doesn't really lack dynamics, so you don't have to worry when I say that it sounds rich and a bit soft in the mid-range. I don't mean it lacks dynamics. It has strong dynamics and strong impact. What it doesn't have is hard edges. While most DACs tend to either be R2R and be really soft, completely soft, R2R typically is defined by its softness and lack of impact, or they tend to be delta sigma, situation in which they tend to be quite hard and have that digital glare, edge, and edgy sound that delta sigma DACs are known for. PowerDAC-SX has a totally different approach. It's like it takes the advantages of delta sigma having strong impact and well-defined sound with a strong detail, and combines it with the very soft edge that we typically get from R2R DACs. It's unique, to say the least. It's a very powerful presentation that doesn't force the music onto you. It allows you to enjoy, to taste the music, and if you really want to experience music as it is, PowerDAC-SX helps with that a lot. The soundstage is really expanded, wide and holographic. You have no bounds to the soundstage. You can hear music as if they are coming out of your room. Room acoustics, psychoacoustics, room treatment, everything plays a role into that. Even the speakers play a role. But with Diamond 30 Mark II, the speakers I'm currently using, I'm looking at them because one of them is there and one of them is right in my back. But with those speakers, I get one of the widest soundstages that I've heard, but still excellent instrument separation. There is always the risk of getting scattering and of having less definition when you widen the soundstage, because if the sound is really wide, you just throw it away. And that doesn't really happen here. You get a wide but well-defined sound. As there is no DSP or digital signal processing, there is no magical processing going on outside of the DAC conversion of the signal, I can say that the approach resulted in one of the most engaging presentations that I've ever seen. You also have to consider the price point. Alone, PowerDAC-SX costs 3,500 euros, which is about 4,000 US dollars, roughly. And S300 Plus from Catches costs about as much, but it is just a power amplifier and it requires a DAC, which will run you from 1,000 US dollars to 2,000 US dollars at least to get the same experience as with PowerDAC-SX. That is not a fault of Catches. Catches still designed a really good amplifier there, but when you don't have an amplifier and you don't need to design an amplifier, you can cut out every single bit of background noise, every single bit of hissing, any weird electronic noises, and you're left with pure music, with pure enjoyment. And I didn't really make enough of a big deal with this, but with ECDesigns PowerDAC-SX, you don't hear background noise. I always hear a bit of background noise. Catches S300 Plus having a strong gain, you will hear the noise of the DACs usually, and most DACs have quite a bit of noise. Every single DAC I've used with an RCA connector had a bit of noise. Well, with the ECDesigns PowerDAC-SX, there is no noise, regardless of the volume, even if you bring it really loud, no noise. So while I am tempted to draw comparisons to Class D, to Class A, to amplifiers, I don't want to do that, because it's not an amplifier, it is a DAC which powers your speakers, and that's it. Having this unique design has its own strengths, and so far no disadvantage. It's just that this is the only company which was able to work around this. ECDesigns is the only company which has this, at least as far as I know. They're the only company which makes commercially available products which use this design. The driving power will be enough for what I believe to be any pair of speakers, because it can drive Pylon, Diamond 30 Mark II, it will drive everything. It can also drive KLH Model 5, NHTC3, Bouchard S400 and all of the other speakers that I have. So it doesn't struggle at all. What it does is provide me with clean, well-defined music, which isn't hard on the ears, but which isn't soft as with R2R. It's just natural, the way it should be. Also wide and holographic. I hope that you will check out my full written review. It goes more in depth with the technology that the company used. And also, since this is such a unique product, it took way longer for me to test it than most amplifiers. I was not really able to switch between it and other amplifiers unless I did a lot of cable switching. So I hope that you are having fun. I hope you are enjoying Audiophile Heaven. My written reviews should help you understand the technical aspect a bit more, while my video reviews will help you understand my feelings and my subjective experience with products. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you are having a good experience on Audiophile Heaven. I hope you will subscribe to my channel. That would mean a lot to me. I hope you like the video, share it with your friends, and thank you so much for watching. Hope to see you soon. Bye bye.